Welcome back to another installment of Miniature Mashup. Today, guys, we'll be making a very attractive little hag hut, something along the lines of 54mm scale. At least I mean to say it's scaled to a large or huge creature in your standard D&D 28mm scale. Why would you want to make something like this by hand in the day of 3D printing? Well, maybe you just like to craft stuff, or maybe you just want to get rid of a bunch of old bottle caps, because that's what this project is. This is a very affordable craft project, unless of course you're watching this in some kind of Fallout future. Unless of course you're watching this in a Fallout future, in which case it's a very expensive project. For me, I just like to make things with my hands. I don't always want to 3D print stuff. Although this project does use a little bit of a 3D printed element, it's certainly not necessary. Starting out with a big old pile of bottle caps. They're all the same size. I think that's going to make it easier to work with them. Pretty sure they came from water. I got them all. I didn't actually drink out of whatever was in there. I actually picked this up from a church that was closing and getting rid of their craft supply. The base for this project is a plastic lid from a large coffee can. And I'm just gluing a 3D printed door element onto it. I have other doors you can use. I've got some that I've made with silicone molds based on a locket I have. I've used that in past projects. But a viewer did send me this 3D printed door, and I wanted to incorporate it into something. It doesn't have a back, so it wouldn't be a good one to just stand up in the dungeon. I think it's fine this way. It's just sort of a door to my little witch's hut I'm making here. Now, as you can see, I'm just going around the edge of the plastic lid from this coffee can and putting our little bottle caps on there. Anyway, as you can see, I'm not leaving any real gaps in between. Their round shape gives you the impression of a gap, and I just start putting in a second layer. See, I'm staggering it, trying to get each individual bottle cap over the gap of the layer beneath. Now I'm putting in a window, and this is simply just a leftover sprue, I think from a Mantic model set, or probably a 40K model set. A bit of a toothpick there to define this sort of inside of our window. I'll be sitting this large skull bead in that window. I'm just going to clean it up with a safety knife first. Just going in there with an X-Acto. Got a bunch of skull beads here, a variety of different kinds, and I'm just gluing them in around the door, just filling in gaps where the door meets the strange bottle caps. It's not a natural fit, and just makes it look a little more menacing, like the home of a monster, which this of course will be, since it's going to be way too large for standard humans to live in when it's all finished. Now let's start working on that roof. I've just got some craft wood here, little bits of balsa. These are sort of cubical, and I just sort of measure them out into 3 equal lengths, and I start going at them with my wood gouging tool. That's going to give the wood the character of something old and beat up, far more interesting to look at, much more believable than just putting the sort of fresh, unblemished wood on the top. If this is supposed to be something medieval, not well kept up, kind of rough hewn, you really want to put that in there. And we're just going to put that on the top of our structure with a little hot glue gun as well. I say little. This is my big hot glue gun. I have a little one also. Just spacing those out so they cover up enough of the brick and, of course, the space in between our bottle cap bricks. We don't want to see any of that. Now this project presented an interesting challenge because I could not find my massive collection of craft sticks that I have, so I had to make do. I do have a drawer here just marked wood, but it's all sorts of weird bits of wood, and I ended up having to use like coffee stirrers and whatnot, and it posed an interesting challenge for me, but I think the roof ended up coming out better because of it. I think if I had relied on the standard craft sticks, it wouldn't have been such a good finished product. The sort of top slats of the roof, I just started using chopped up coffee stirrers that I had, bits of scrap wood, and I'm just chopping them up with my heavy wire cutter. Also going after them with the wood gouging tool to give them the same sort of rough-hewn, weathered look. I'm going to flock the base with some sand, and I put a cardboard box over it to let it dry overnight so the cats can't play with it. You see, they're very interested in my crafting stuff. This little cardboard box makes it so they cannot get to this project while it's drying. I could leave the walls as is with the bottle cap bricks being exposed, but they've got kind of an artificial, goofy look. More suited maybe to some sort of, Jack Vance Dying Earth, post-apocalyptic fantasy look, and I just want to conceal that a little bit. I don't dislike the look of the bottle caps, but I just don't want it to be so prominent and recognizable, and so I'm going to hide it a little, make the walls look a little more like they're clay, or at least that clay is part of the construction. And I'm going to do that by just mixing up a little bit of plaster and smearing that all around onto the bottle cap bricks on the outside. Just putting that on with a loose piece of craftwood here. Later, I make it a little bit runnier by adding more water to the plaster and just sort of spooning it on with a plastic spoon, dripping it in here. You can also see my craft sand, which is glued to the bottom of the base. It just comes right up to the walls of our little hut. Time to take it outside, and I just prime this in black. I'll be working up from black on this project. Just getting all the shadow in there, and honestly, once that black primer goes on, you can already start to picture this as a finished product. It already looks better. The sort of off colors of a unprimed model always ruin the illusion, but coming at this with some dirt cheap gray acrylic paint. I use my Citadel or Reaper paints for any terrain. I just used the cheapest Walmart craft paints I can get my hands on for stuff like this. It doesn't really suffer for it. And I'm just slapping gray on here. I'm not trying to get on all the nooks and crannies. I want those little shadows to be there. So the paint is reasonably thick, but I do add a little bit of water just to get it on. Going around the base with another dirt cheap green paint. Same thing. This is just cheap acrylic paint. I'm using a big old brush that would be typically used for detailing in a house painting type setting, but it's just fine for this, at least while we're starting in on the base coats. I will go in after and put in shadows, put in highlights, do some dry brushing, pick some details out here and there, like on the door and on the skulls. It's none of that's pictured here, but you'll see it in the finished product. Doing the roof of the hut with a base coat of cinnamon, and I'm just working up from there with lighter shades of brown after that. Once it's all painted up and I've got all the details in, just go around with a little bit of E6000 and some scenic plants. This is some kind of a moss that I like to use, and just cover up some of the rougher bits, some of the places where there's a little too much glue showing or where I just don't like the look of it. And we're just going to pretty this thing up with scenic plants here and there. Just some sort of mold and moss growing along this thing. Getting those plants all over. Some on the base, some on the side. Really pretty happy with it. Let's take a look at some of the finished product pictures. I think it turned out pretty great, considering it's made of absolute junk. Didn't take a whole lot of time or effort. You can see here, we've got a pretty big Minotaur, and he'd be right at home in a place like this. Guys, if you'd like to support the channel, please consider donating to my GoFundMe. Come and say hey to us on the Facebook page. You can see pictures of this project and other projects there. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell so you can know when other videos are coming up. And as always, my faithful mashed potatoes, thank you for watching, and please come on back soon.